Hi, I'm Doug Boynton, and you're listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition, where we highlight the week's news and stories happening in our region. In this week's program, a former Navy chief has been sentenced to 18 months in prison for his role in stealing $850,000 worth of Navy supplies from Yorktown. At a time when climate change expands flood risk, flood insurance is facing challenges to cover the costs. But one Norfolk nonprofit is countering this by dishing out funds to 4 startups working on flood insurance solutions.
One of the things that has been a big challenge for flood in the past is it's been considered uninsurable because it's catastrophic, it's hard to predict, and that's where we come in.
We'll get into those stories and more. It's WHRO's Weekly Edition as we kick things off this week on the home front, and we're speaking literally. It may not be the combo that most people want to hear, but the number of homes sold in Hampton Roads lingered around record lows this year, but the prices kept climbing. WHRO's Ryan Murphy updates us.
Home sales dropped sharply in 2023 from their pandemic peak and stayed low both nationally and in Hampton Roads. That's led to lower prices in many major markets. But in Hampton Roads,
despite this significant decline in home sales, home prices have remained stubbornly high.
That's economist Nikki Johnson from the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission. She shared the new numbers with Virginia Beach elected leaders last week. Johnson says the region's low housing supply is driving prices up, and increasing the supply is the best way to bring prices down. The median home price in Hampton Roads is now $378,000. That's 41% higher than in 2019. Ryan Murphy, WHRO News.
Turning now to the great outdoors, Virginia conservationists scored a win after Governor Glenn Youngkin recently awarded millions in state grants to protect land throughout the Commonwealth. WHRO's Catherine Hafner reports on the money coming to Hampton Roads.
The city of Chesapeake will get $800,000 to take over 96 acres along Deep Creek. The goal is to protect wetlands that make up a majority of the property and provide more public access to the waterfront. Over in Suffolk, state officials will use $1.3 million to acquire nearly 2,000 acres of forest, including Virginia's last natural stand of longleaf pine trees. The area will become part of the state's natural preserve system. Virginia Beach is also getting more than $700,000 from the state. The money will allow the city to buy land to expand Pleasure House Point and Munden Point Park along the North Landing River. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
A former Navy chief has been sentenced to 18 months in federal court for stealing $850,000 worth of Navy supplies from Yorktown. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh fills us in.
Richard Allen was sentenced in federal court in Rhode Island after pleading guilty in August to stealing a host of goods from Naval Weapons Station Yorktown Chatham Annex. The former Navy chief and unnamed conspirators sold goods around the world, including to buyers in China and Russia. The group stole working uniforms, winter gear, flame-retardant shirts and pants, and soft body armor. The theft included the trident insignia used to symbolize the Navy SEALs. Court records show from 2013 through 2015, the group rented a cabin on Naval Weapons Station Yorktown and drove around to warehouses on base. Allen was initially arrested in 2018. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
If you have any comments or issues with the Suffolk Police Department, now is the time to make your voice heard. The department is seeking public input as part of its attempt to maintain accreditation. WHRO's Nick McNamara reports.
Suffolk Police will be assessed in early January by the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, or CALEA. As part of the assessment, residents can share their thoughts on the department with CALEA. An online portal is live at suffolkpd.com. Written comments on the department can be shared directly with CALEA via mail or email. The voluntary accreditation process evaluates police departments across the country on a set of 205 professional standards. Suffolk Police were first accredited in 2014. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
As the holidays descend upon us, the official White House Christmas tree this year was selected from a farm in western North Carolina. That's the area that produces a fourth of the country's Christmas trees, and that suffered major damages from Hurricane Helene. Grayson County in southwest Virginia is another one of the country's top Christmas tree producers. That area was also hard hit by flooding. VPR's Roxy Todd checked in with farmers to see how they're faring this holiday season.
Melissa Goodman works with her husband at Mount Rogers Christmas Tree Farm in Grayson County.
I think everyone is just much more aware of how blessed we are.
Their farm didn't suffer too much damage in the flood, but she knows others that did, especially over the state line in North Carolina.
And everybody's just trying to pull together and get through and hoping 25 is a better year. It is humbling, I'll put it that way.
Goodman and her husband sell most of their trees outside of Trader Joe's in Fairfax County. A majority of the Christmas trees grown in Grayson County are sold at big box stores throughout Virginia. Kevin Sperlin is that county's extension agent.
About 1.2 million trees are marketed out of Grayson County in a year. Grayson County ranks 8th nationally.
Sperlin says mudslides and debris during Helene took out some Christmas trees in southwest Virginia, but the losses are small compared with the overall agricultural damage. Sperlin says buying trees grown in Virginia can help support farmers, many of whom grow several different crops each year. Christmas tree sales may be the only thing keeping them afloat in the months ahead. I'm Roxy Todd.
Still ahead on Weekly Edition, we're not done talking elections yet. Norfolk wants to move local elections away from November. We'll hear more about their potential request to the General Assembly. But first, it will be a happy holiday season for the sailors and Marines from the USS Wasp as they will return to Norfolk. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh has the story.
The 4,500 sailors and Marines from the USS Wasp Amphibious Ready Group are positioned off the East Coast after crossing the Atlantic Ocean earlier in the week. The ships and Marines were part of the heightened U.S. response after war broke out in Gaza. They patrolled the eastern Mediterranean for most of their deployment. Setting sail at the end of May, the group replaced the carrier USS Eisenhower in the region. The ships include the USS New York, USS Oak Hill, and parts of the 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit. The group made headlines when 2 Marines were assaulted by protesters while on leave in Turkey. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
There are a lot of challenges right now with flood insurance like climate change, expanding the bounds of risk and not enough money to cover it. But local officials also see opportunities. Last year, the Norfolk nonprofit Rise Resilience Innovations gave out money to 4 startups working on flood insurance solutions. WHRO's Catherine Hafner reports what they've been up to.
One of the biggest issues with flood insurance is who is going to pay for all the damage caused by floodwaters. Not enough people have policies, plus the National Flood Insurance Program is deeply in debt. The goal of Rise's funding challenge was to find ways to get more people to buy into flood insurance by making it a lot cheaper. To start, officials have to know how likely it is for a building to flood. That's where a company called True Flood Risk comes in. They calculate the exact height of a building's first floor. It sounds technical, and it is, but CEO Shelley Close says this is actually a key data point.
And with that, then you know at what point a property will flood, what the substantial loss estimates will be, what the replacement costs will be, and ultimately the mitigation strategy.
One of the other winning companies also wants to get a better handle on risk.
One of the things that has been a big challenge for flood in the past is it's been considered uninsurable because it's catastrophic, it's hard to predict, and that's where we come in.
That's Derek Lynch with Rethought Insurance. He says this uncertainty often translates to variable flood insurance premiums for homeowners. They may pay one price one year, then 4 times as much the next. Rethought's technology gets a more precise look at risk. That way, Lynch says private insurers can charge customers fairly.
The intention has always been to get more people flood at a price they can afford.
There's also a lot of uncertainty when it comes to government-run insurance. A couple years ago, the National Flood Insurance Program changed the way it calculates risk and premiums. It's complicated, but essentially the goal was to make things more equitable, so the owners of a mansion and a tiny house in the same neighborhood aren't paying the same price. The problem is, the agency's new methodology is a black box. A company called National Flood Experts works to break through. President Brad Hubbard says they allow customers to look at all 37 factors that affect how much you pay for flood insurance. Then, knowing all of that,
you can make adjustments either on a macro scale, like improving drainage in an area or or smaller things to the structure, raise it 6 inches, adding mitigation, things like that.
Most of these RISE Challenge winners are working to fix problems in the existing marketplace. But the last concept actually looks at a whole new way of doing things. It's called parametric insurance. Nikki Devlin runs a startup called RIC, which charges just $14 a month. She says they look at rainfall in your neighborhood and set a certain threshold, say 5 inches of rain in a day. If that threshold is met,
you receive your payout within 48 hours. So we're really able to get funding to these folks rapidly after a larger extreme weather event.
Think of it more like disaster insurance, getting money to pay not just for damage to your home, but also to help with buying food or having to stay in a hotel. Devlin says employers are interested in offering policies as a benefit, just like health insurance.
It's their workforce that's impacted after these catastrophes, and the faster they can get their employees back to work, the better it is for them.
The city of Norfolk may even be the first to offer RIC as an employee benefit. In the meantime, the city's also thinking about a new approach called community-based catastrophe insurance. The local government would arrange insurance community-wide and get discounts for projects like the massive flood wall. Deputy Resilience Director Matt Simons says they want to add financial protection for residents.
If we have an event that presents an overtopping scenario to our flood wall or some sort of compromise to our system, that we've got those layers of resilience in place so that the finance layer can pick up any pieces that the civil works layer, so to speak, might miss.
It's not clear yet how all of these ideas will affect flood insurance for homeowners in Hampton Roads, but officials hope to see more people protect themselves against the growing threat of flooding. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
Norfolk City officials want to move local elections away from November. Barry Graham has details on a potential request to the General Assembly.
In 2021, local elections were moved to November in order to save money and consolidate efforts with federal office elections. Norfolk officials, including Mayor Kenny Alexander, are considering the request for the upcoming Assembly session. City officials say the shift caused local issues to be lost against national and international matters, and candidates for local offices cite the increased cost for running a campaign when competing in November. The move would require altering the city charter or a legislative bill, both needing approval from the General Assembly. Barry Graham, WHRO News.
This is WHRO's Weekly Edition. Remember, for any stories you've missed, you can visit us on the WHRO smartphone app or all social media platforms.
An underground fire was discovered on the morning of Saturday, November 23rd, behind the premium outlets in James City County. It burned for more than 100 hours before being extinguished the following Wednesday night by the James City County Fire Department with help from Newport News crews. WHRO's Nick McNamara spoke with James City County Fire Chief Ryan Ash about the blaze and what's been learned.
Has anything new been learned about the cause of the fire?
No, our fire marshal's office is continuing to investigate. That will likely occur over the next couple more weeks. They're continuing reaching out to any of the neighbors in the area, which they did a lot of that last week. Continue to talk to some of the business owners just to see if they heard anything, saw anything, trying to put together a timeline. Because of the amount of damage and, we suspect some burn time prior to our arrival because part of the parking lot had already collapsed. It's going to be very difficult, if ever, to determine the cause, but they certainly want to do their due diligence to see if we can figure out something. And part of their investigation also involves research. Has there been any other of these types anywhere else in the country? What were found as other causes, that type of thing. So this one is certainly unique for us and a little different than a normal fire we may encounter where, we can look at things like burn patterns and to help push us back to an origin and ultimately start to determine the possible causes in that area. In this case, being underground, it was very difficult for us to see what may be the first items ignited. We're assuming it's the plastic because that's really all that there was to burn in the ground. It's just very challenging, and that's why we kind of said from the beginning it's likely we may never know the exact cause.
I know concern about runoff from the stormwater system slowed down the extinguishing process a bit. What changed on Wednesday that made crews more comfortable with doing it?
Well, a couple things. One, our extinguishing, is water, and our application of that was really on top of the concrete in most areas. Now, that concrete was pervious, so it allowed some of that to flow through the actual concrete, but we really couldn't get the water applied to what was burning because of being deep in the ground. Structurally and sort of an unknown thermal load underneath made it very difficult for equipment. We weren't going to put excavators on there with an unknown stability for collapse and really unknown how much or what was burning underneath. So trying to factor in all of that. The times that we had allowed it to sort of free burn, if you will, and burn on its own, tended to be more complete combustion. So that actually caused the smoke layer to lift some. So it's sort of a balance between that and then concern about runoff. Virginia Department of Environmental Quality has been there, early on. They came on Saturday. We had an opportunity to meet with them again on Sunday and on Monday. They did some initial water testing for what may be seen in that runoff, and we found normal things, what you would expect off of a parking lot. So by the decision there on Tuesday was that we felt like it was safe to go ahead and apply more extinguishing agent. And that's also the same day that the contractor that we had been coordinating with was willing, based on nearly 100% collapse of the parking lot, I would say greater than 90% by that point, they were willing to put an excavator onto that parking lot and start removing that concrete. And at that point, we knew that our extinguishment efforts could actually get to what was burning.
And you mentioned this fire was a pretty unique situation. Were there any lessons learned that will be carried forward at the department?
Yeah, I think so for sure. One of those is identifying where all these types of facilities are in our county, just for a better situational awareness. Being underground just makes access for us very difficult, and we don't have that equipment readily. So coordinating with the contractor was certainly necessary for them. They had the equipment, but not the extinguishing. We had the extinguishment, but not the equipment. And I think, we have an opportunity where we do tabletop exercises and we do classes with outside agencies and state agencies. And I think this was one of those examples where relationships are made before the incident. So the representatives from the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, our local hazmat teams, the DEQ representatives, were all people we had a relationship with before, even the property owners. Our fire marshal's office regularly works with them on routine business inspections that we do annually. So we already had the relationships. And I think while that necessarily is a lesson learned, it certainly reinforced the importance of having those relationships built prior to an event. And I think that made the communication and the trust and the coordination much easier when we actually had the real event.
That was James City County Fire Chief Ryan Ash. A state commission studying colleges' roles in displacing black neighborhoods to expand their campuses said at a meeting they will request information from 43 public colleges and universities from around the state. Lou Hansen with the Virginia Center for Investigative Journalism at WHRO reports.
Delegate Dolores McQuinn chairs the commission to study the history of uprooting of black communities by public institutions of higher education. McQuinn says her panel will survey Virginia's 43 public colleges and universities about their campus expansions and how these developments impacted nearby black neighborhoods. McQuinn says reaching affected community members may be difficult.
Often, the anger has gone on from generation to generation because of the injustices that have occurred.
The state created the commission following a series by VCIJ at WHRO and ProPublica that documented how Christopher Newport University systematically chipped away at the predominantly black Shoe Lane neighborhood. For VCIJ at WHRO, I'm Lou Hansen.
A lack of child care is a common barrier to keeping some from taking college classes and others from completing their degrees. As Megan Pauley with VPM News reports, one local community college has decided to fill the void by providing full-day child care on campus.
What is something that we can measure? A house. A house? Yes, you can. A house.
Preschoolers at Tidewater Community College's Norfolk Child Care Center are drawing things they can measure. Everything from snakes to windows and bricks.
But I need to make the bricks.
Okay, I'll let you make the bricks.
Our house is made out of bricks.
The facility is conveniently located inside the student center. Some Tidewater students can now send their kids ages 2 to 5 here free of charge. A federal grant called C Campus is covering most of that cost. Student Hazel Polito is a 25-year-old single mom and is grateful that her academic advisor told her about this program for her 3-year-old son, Legacy.
It just helps out a lot so I can be able to focus on school and then know that he's being taken care of.
Before enrolling Legacy here, Polito's mom was helping care for him while she looked for childcare elsewhere. But everything she found was too expensive.
We saw that it was one of the barriers to completion of our courses.
That's Sierra Streeter, director of the Child Development Centers at Tidewater.
The lack of childcare is why students could not attend class or would not, enroll in class because of that childcare need.
She says providing childcare on campus also helps students who don't have reliable transportation, though grant funding also pays for off-campus childcare if that's what the student chooses.
Whatever logistically works for that family, we wanted to make sure that we met that need.
The Student Center in Norfolk was built over a decade ago with childcare in mind. The YWCA operated a daycare in the space, but it's now been vacant for several years until the C Campus program arrived this past January. Tidewater Community College opened another childcare center on its Portsmouth campus last fall.
Got our binoculars. What are we gonna see? A reindeer! Another bear?
On a crisp November morning, teacher Ella Wainick takes kids on a make-believe bear hunt on the playground there before lunch. They also hunt for dandelions, rocks, and at one point, zombies.
Run, it's a zombie! Who's the zombie?
Wainick has worked in early childhood education for the last 25 years and says it's a privilege to work with the kids and help their parents.
It's a big deal to allow parents to have the opportunity to be able to know that they can take classes and not worry about where can I put my child.
In the late afternoon, parents arrive to pick up their kids, and some don't have to travel far. Trina Ferguson and her husband come around 5 p.m. for their 3-year-old daughter, Jasmine.
I have a sticker like this.
Oh, you do?
Ferguson works as an advisor on the Portsmouth campus, walking distance from the Student Center. TCC staff members can also send their kids here at a discounted rate.
I've enjoyed having my daughter close to me while I work. I can go out on my lunch and peep and see her out on the playground playing.
Ferguson says Jasmine has best friends here and has developed a lot since enrolling. There are still spots available at both this childcare center and the one in Norfolk, including some for community members. Tidewater also plans to open another childcare center in August on its Virginia Beach campus. That facility will have the largest capacity of the 3, serving up to 100 kids, including some infants. For VPM News, I'm Megan Polly in Portsmouth.
You've been listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition. We had help today from WHRO's Ryan Murphy, Catherine Hafner, Steve Walsh, Barry Graham, and Nick McNamara. VCIJ's Lou Hansen, VPR's Roxy Todd, WFDD's DJ Simmons, and VPM's Megan Pauley. Also, Connor Worley, who produced today's show. A reminder, you can always catch full episodes on the Weekly Edition podcast feed. You can get your news updates at WHRO.org and the WHRO Reports podcast feed. For all of us at WHRO and WHRV, I'm Doug Boynton.